All right. Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started since it is now noon on the dot. I'm really excited. We've got awesome turnout here today. This is a really important topic that we're going to cover, so I'm glad that you tuned in. Let me give you a formal welcome. Good afternoon to everyone. Thanks so much for joining in today to today's Money Counts webinar on money and relationships. So let's start off this session with a round of introductions, shall we? I'm going to open up a quick poll for you to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go ahead and tell you a little bit about who we are. So hang tight just a second. I'm going to go ahead and relaunch that. Becky, can you confirm with me, just like a head nod, is that showing up? It is. Perfect. Okay. Wonderful. Well, let's get on to our introductions then, right? My name is Sarah Metzger, and I'm an associate for the Sokolov-Miller Family Financial and Life Skills Center here at Penn State's University Park campus. I get to host this twice monthly webinar series, which is great fun. And I also oversee the center's workshop and first year seminar programs. So if you are an incoming first year student, chances are I will see you in class this fall, if I haven't already seen you at new student orientation this summer. Joining me today is my amazing colleague, Becky, whom I'll let her introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Becky Moore. I'm happy to be here with you today. I am also an associate here at the Financial and Life Skills Center. My primary focus is meeting mostly one-on-one with students to discuss their finances or help them with any questions that they might have.
Awesome. All right, now I'm looking at this poll. We've got most of you having responded, so I'll give you about 10 more seconds. And as I point this out, if you did start to respond, just take a look at the bottom. I know you got to scroll. There is a third question that's asking who you speak to about money, which is a major question to ask because that's kind of underpinning this whole session, right? Like this is why you showed up today. You're thinking about these people in your life, and we want to know, who are you talking to about money? So I'm going to go ahead and close this and share the results back out to everyone. So let's take a look here and see. I can tell that summer is coming closer to an end because we definitely have more undergraduate students tuning in, right? We're starting to get back into that brain space of school, and I love that. So welcome to you all, grad students, alumni, staff, and faculty alike. We're really glad that you're here. Hopefully I can get my words out better for the rest of this session. All right, hang in there, Sarah. And in terms of, of the group that's here, who are you talking with about money? Primarily, we're saying parents and family. And my guess is that's because we have a fair amount of undergraduate students tuned in. That makes sense, but that's not the only people we are talking to. You all are reporting that you talk a lot with friends about money, significant others, roommates, as well as some folks here on campus, advisors, counselors, mentors. And then some of you all are reporting that there's no one that you're actually talking to about money. And there might be a variety of reasons for that, but we're going to investigate this all a little bit further, right? Now, as we get started here, and before we dive deep in on our topic, I do want to point out a couple of things. This webinar is being recorded, right? Which if you've been to our webinars before, you know that's the case. We record everything so that we can post it on our website later on for you to access on demand. And I'm going to encourage you to check out our website where that webinar is going to be located, that recording. You'll see the link in the chat. I encourage you to check out our website to find this recording as well as others and all of the other resources that we have online, including our self-study modules, which cover 28 different personal finance topics, information about our mentoring program, as well as information about scheduling one-on-one consultations, which I'm going to let Becky tell you more about because that's really her wing of this work.
Yeah, so the one-on-one consultations are really one of the most amazing resources, in my opinion, that we offer because it can be customized and personalized for each person, which is really important when it comes to finances and budgeting. You're going to see throughout our discussion today that everyone is viewing their finances differently. Everyone's coming from a different background. So it's really good to have the one-on-one option. We talk a lot. Some of our most common topics are just like budgeting and understanding your student loans, saving and investing. So any like money questions, feel free to schedule one-on-ones. We book them all through Starfish. If you don't have access to Starfish, you can also email us as well.
Awesome. I also want to point out, by extension, these one-on-one consultations that Becky's talking about, they are available to staff, faculty, and alumni. And, in that, with that population of folks, so those of you who tuned in and that kind of fits you, you can come in and talk with us about public service loan forgiveness specifically. That's a major topic of conversation right now. Becky can tell you she has been meeting with lots and lots of folks over the last several weeks. And that's because interest has really peaked. We have a temporary waiver out right now around loan forgiveness, public service loan forgiveness. So people have questions, right? And I'm going to point to first that we've got a webinar coming up on that topic. So in 2 weeks, we're going to talk about public service loan forgiveness, give you an overview. But then if you're interested, you can meet with Becky. I see she unmuted herself. Becky, if you want to speak any more to that in brief before we dive into our actual, the other content today, right?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you are trying to book for depending on your reason, if you're going through Starfish on our website, it's option number 2. If you're trying to book a public service loan forgiveness appointment, it is option number 3. So just so you know, there are 2 different options on the website.
Perfect. And so all of this taken together, folks, all of these resources, they're really meant to empower you financially. That's our mission at the center. So we told you a little bit about what we do. We want you to keep these services in mind as we go through today's session so that you can think about how to best utilize us as a resource in your own personal finance journey. And today, again, that focus is going to be on money and relationships. All right, so we are going to launch into our conversation. I'm going to say we're going to launch into our conversation about money and relationships with a quick TikTok video. And honestly, I'll be curious to know your reaction to it after. I really like this. Take a listen.
Dad, how much money do you make?
That's none of your business, son.
Oh, okay. Hey, Mom, how much is our house worth? The value of our home comes from within. Yeah, okay.
Yes, sir, just got a promotion.
Cheers to that, man. How much are you making now?
It's really none of your business.
Oh, my bad.
So how did you end up in all this debt?
I don't know. I just never talked about money.
Okay. I chuckle every time. I'm not a big TikTok user, but the things that I do happen to find on TikTok are always hilarious. And I think that this particular video is super relevant to the conversation we're trying to have here today. Honestly, for me, it hits pretty close to home since, for me, growing up, I was taught that it's impolite to talk about money and you should never ask anybody about how much money they make and it's just rude and don't do it, right? Shut down that conversation in full. Feel free to drop your reactions in the chat to this as well. I will say that it's true for a lot of folks that money is a touchy subject since questions and conversation about someone's finances, especially their income, can feel like questions or critiques of their self-worth, right? You maybe have felt this yourself specifically, and that might be the relatable piece of it, right? With that said, it should come as no surprise then that financial and market research firms are finding, or have found, I should say, that 34% of cohabitating couples among them. So in 34% of cohabitating couples, one or both partners could correctly identify how much money the other person makes, right? There's this idea that money is such a taboo topic. We're not talking about it. Research is finding that, right? In fact, research is finding that people are more comfortable talking with friends about marital issues, mental health, addiction, and politics more than money, which arguably are really difficult things to talk about, right? Those are all really tricky topics, but people are still opting to have conversations about those topics over money because money is just that challenging to talk about. And I get it. It's a highly personal topic, and consequently, it's going to be an emotional one too, which makes it incredibly difficult to speak to that other person about it. But when money is a focal point in any of your relationships, it really does behoove us to develop this type of interpersonal skill. To be sure, this presentation today is not aimed only at couples with shared expenses. I really want to make that clear, that if you arrived today and you said, I talk with, friends about money, is this the right presentation for me? Yeah, it totally is, right? Because we want to look at money and relationships through a variety of lenses, a variety of contexts. I want you to continue thinking about all the people that you talk about money with, I should say. You said friends, family, people at school, right? Benefactors, a lot of different folks that have hands in your finances. If you are a roommate, you are probably splitting costs with someone else. If you're a parent, you might be financially supporting your child. If you are a child, you may be receiving, I should say student, right? If you're a student, you might be receiving support from your parents. If you're a newlywed, you might be just trying to figure out how to merge your finances for the first time. You might even just be an acquaintance who is out to dinner with a group of friends and you're trying to figure out how to split the bill. There are a variety of contexts in which we would be talking about money with people we know closely or people we don't know so very well. Successfully navigating these various contexts for the good of your personal finances is really going to take confidence, and it's going to take some know-how. And the know-how piece, that's really what Becky and I are here to give you today.
All right, so we are going to dive in here, starting with a little bit of reflecting on yourself, because that's really important when it comes to discussing money, is knowing how you actually feel about it. So everyone kind of has their own different money personalities. We're going to look at 5 key money personalities today and just kind of get a feel for where you think you might fall within those 5 personalities. And they kind of describe, like, what is your approach to money? Do you tend to be a person who saves more? Do you tend to be a person who just spends more? Do you keep track of your finances? Do you just kind of let it go? How do you handle those situations and those different circumstances to understand what are your strengths and weaknesses when it comes to finances? And are you able to use your strengths and weaknesses with someone else? So whether that be like your roommate or your spouse, or whoever that person might be, your mom, your dad, whoever it is you're working with finances. Like Sarah mentioned, there's a lot of people that are having a hand in your finances. So we're going to look at these 5 money personalities. So the core ones are spender, saver, risk taker, security seeker, and flyer. What we're going to do is we're going to have you do a poll here in a second and kind of identify from the 5 sentences that pop up, which one you identify with the most. So you're going to pick one of the 5, or maybe more than one if you really are stuck in a tie. It should be popping up on your screen here. Go take a minute, just read through and try to select which one you think best describes you. And then we're going to see kind of what personality you might have money-wise.
And I should also clarify that that link that came through the chat is for a separate money personality quiz that you can take for yourself. So don't go to the link, go to the poll.
Sarah, will you let us know once you can tell how many people have submitted? Because on my end, I can't see that.
Yeah, we've got a little over half. And I
Okay.
reckon folks are still reading through some of those options, probably
Perfect.
trying to decide, is it this, is it that? It can be more than one. I say if we give it another 20 seconds, we should be good to go.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and then share out the results for everyone to see.
All right, awesome. So based on your statement, it should tie into kind of reflecting one of these 5 money personalities there. It looks like we have a couple that are very, very close to each other. The leader here might be I'm very careful with money and spend it on things, the one that's like the things that are on sale or things that you need. It looks like the leader in this current classroom or in this current Zoom room. But we do have a lot of variety. The one here that is the lowest is the one where it's I don't really think about money and usually let someone else handle it. Um, I think that that's pretty accurate reflection based on my experience because most of us do think about money. If you are the person who picked that, maybe you're just kind of on the back burner, or maybe you're just not at that stage yet where you're like feeling comfortable looking at money. And hopefully today's discussion will get you to a point where you are feeling a bit more comfortable and you're like, okay, maybe I should like look into my money or my finances a little bit more so I am comfortable with it. So let's go through what each of these personalities actually means. So our spender. So if you were the spender, that was the person who got the thrill from spending money. If you pick that sentence where it talked about the thrill for spending on yourself, you don't hesitate to make a purchase. This person is very happy to spend money. As if it brings them some joy, they're not second guessing it. Then we have our saver here is the next one. So our saver would be that person who is very careful with their money. They only spend it on things that maybe they need. They have that rainy day fund just in case, whether that happens or not. They don't want to accumulate debts. And this is generally speaking, if you're like, well, Becky, these don't all apply to me, that's okay. Okay, maybe parts of them apply to you, maybe parts of them do not. That's why we can have like a primary personality and then a secondary personality. Our third one here is our risk taker. So this person likes the idea of maybe taking risks, or maybe they like invest in a brand new startup company and they're not as worried about making that gamble or making that big risk because they could get a big return. So that's the more of the risk taker personality. Then we have our security seeker. This is the person who might do a lot of research. They might not feel very comfortable investing until they spend a lot of time fully understanding the investments and digging really deep into those companies. They only spend their money very wisely. And then finally, we have our flyer. This is that person who doesn't really take a lot of time to think about their money. They're totally fine with just letting someone else kind of be their financial advisor. Or kind of handling their financial matters. And for a lot of us, especially if you're an undergrad student, I find that for myself, when I was an undergrad student, I absolutely was like the flyer. My parents were kind of handling things. And then I started to transition out of that as I like got my own apartment and started having to pay my own bills and buy my own groceries. I always was told like when you get to the point that you have to buy your own toilet paper, you've like crossed this financial bridge of, oh shoot, I have to actually buy my own toilet paper now. Like I have to budget for that. So some of us might be going through those phases right now and making those transitions.
I love it. I love it. I totally agree. I think that, these are not, it can be fluid, right? Your age and stage can also influence your money personality at a given time. So keep that in mind. The money personalities that you do see on the screen here, you will get more information about by taking that money personality quiz that I shared through the chat earlier. If you need that link again because you just tuned in, let me know. I can send it right through again, but it will let you know based on a series of questions that you answer what your primary personality is and that secondary personality and what it all kind of means for you as a full person engaging in your personal finances, right? So this personality of yours, it is understandably going to impact and influence really your habits and your behaviors around money. I'm guessing that you keep your fingers crossed, as I have in my past. I've kept my fingers crossed that my money personality is going to jive well with others, but we know that that's not always the case, right? There are going to be differences of opinion. Conflict does happen. Think between parents and their child. If you are a student, you might find find yourself in conflict with your family, conflict with roommates, a significant other. Like this happens. You can promote cooperation and responsiveness when you develop an understanding of your own value system and your own attitude toward money, like Becky said. So there are, these are the things that influence your money personality ultimately, right? So that money personality quiz, it's taking stock of that information. When you go about undertaking a trip of self-exploration, you can take control of your money personality and really work to find harmony in the money relationships that you are engaging in. But it really starts with you first assessing your relationship with money, as all things in personal finance do. That's why we call it personal finance, right? So as you're looking inward, you'll begin to recognize the effects of your money habits on yourself as well as others. And you're also going to start to recognize your personal strengths around personal finance. And all of this impacts how you interact with others and the quality of your relationships, which I wish I could just totally disconnect money from my relationships, right? But it's always there. Money is ever present in our lives, and it's ever present in our personal lives and personal relationships with others. Becky is going to chat with us about this exploration that we can do. She's going to share some questions to consider on the next slide to help us get better acquainted with our money selves.
Yeah, so this is a pretty comprehensive list. So I'm not going to go through every single one on here. As always, you can always refer back to the slides when we post them on the website if you want to answer every single one. However, I am going to pick one that I want everyone to try to answer in the chat. One of the questions on here is, what is the first word that comes to mind when you hear the word money? So if anyone could just take a second to put in the chat, what is the first word that comes to your mind when you hear the word money? We'll see what some of you come up with. Kind of like reflecting on yourself, self-assessing. Chaos. I get that. It is chaotic, right? Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I invest? Should I save? Should I take a new job for more money? Should I put my kid in childcare? Should I get a different roommate? That's all chaos tied in with those expenditures. Any other words that come to your mind when you hear the word money? Maybe like stress.
Oh, I just wanted to add really quick. I'm so sorry to everyone. It looked like the chat was disabled. I did correct that. You should be able to submit any answers to the chat. I apologize. We did have some messages coming in through the Q&A, Becky. Everybody
okay.
was,
Yeah, I do see.
they were very creative. They're like, we're gonna bypass this issue here. Sarah doesn't have the chat on for some reason.
All right, debt are some words, stress, stability, decisions, expensive. So now we got lots of answers coming in. Shame. Yeah, and some of these are very negative words, or words that might have a negative connotation with them. And that kind of shows too, like what our feelings are towards money. If you are feeling some of those negative emotions or feelings, and maybe it has to do with like how you grew up, maybe it has to do with your family situation that you came from, or what you dealt with as a child. All of those things are going to influence what word you might put here, or how you might self-assess your own money feelings and your money personality. I know when I was a kid, my parents used to bowl, and at the bowling alley, they had this arcade, but I was never allowed to play any of the games in the arcade because that was a waste of money. And now as an adult, if that happened, I would just be like, Becky, it's 25 cents. Like, my view on that is like, it's a quarter. I can spend a quarter. It's okay, Becky. Like, but I have to consciously tell myself that to get over that, because all I can think of is like me as a kid being like, I'm not allowed to put 25 cents in this pinball machine to play this game. So things like that are influencing you, and it might be things that you can't even remember, like things that might have happened that you don't even realize maybe happened, that are influencing some of these words. I see we have more words even coming in: success, value, managing, assets, greed, work. Yeah. Work. I feel like that's one of my top like words. Like the only way to make money, I feel like, is to work. So I do think of that too. This is great. I love all of these answers that are coming in. Super awesome. Good reflection on yourself, and like thinking too of like, okay, if I put this word, why am I putting that word, right? If I put the word value, what does that mean to me? If I put the word asset or time, why am I putting that word? Like, what has influenced me in my life to get me to be at that point? That's really the first step to making your money relationships work, is reflecting on yourself.
I love it. I thank you all for using that chat as soon as I made the feature available. These are great answers. And as I bring us into this next slide, I just want to leave in the chat an additional resource that I've recently discovered. Our director here at the center introduced these cards to us, and they're really neat. They're called Money Habitude cards, and they are another tool for self-reflection for yourself personally, but also to kind of sit down with others, friends, family, and use these money habitude cards to promote that kind of reflection that you need to do in order to be successful in these financial relationships that you have. So let's continue on. You've done this self-reflection, right? You have identified your money personality and you feel like you have a better grip on the value system that it's rooted in. You've prepped and you're ready to talk money with others, but then this question arrives at like, where do I start? How do I do it, right? My first recommendation here is that you consider the time and place that conversation is going to happen in. It's not on the slide here, but I think that's a really important consideration, right? You certainly don't want to spring a conversation on somebody randomly. It can be kind of stressful, right? If you feel like money is a stressful conversation topic, then other people might feel that same way too, right? Let's say, I'm going to use an example that comes up a lot for students. Let's say that you and your friend want to move off campus in an apartment for next year, right? The sooner y'all talk and get a plan together, the better in this situation, especially because the rental market here in State College is a hot market and nothing lasts very long, right? So there's urgency with that. The sooner you talk, the better. It's a good idea in those kind of situations to schedule a time to have that conversation with your friend that's convenient for both of you, that gives you enough time to plan in advance, right? We don't want to spring these conversations on somebody randomly. Now, continuing with this same example and how to have this conversation, the process to discuss money. Once you start the apartment hunt with this friend that you have, you might feel some pressure to act quickly and decide to forego a sit down meeting with your friend altogether where you would otherwise work out the details, because that's kind of how home buying and apartment hunting can be. Just everything happens so quickly, right? So you start early and then you start to ask yourself, well, what do I want? What is the reason for me moving off campus, right? Why do I want to move off campus? Why do they want to move off campus? Would I rather live with just this friend of mine? Am I open to additional roommates? Where in town do I want to live? You know, for the most part, these types of questions and this area of the conversation, it's money related, but it tends to be an easy part of the conversation, right? Conversations that deal in money are not always hard. Elements of those conversations are sometimes fun and exciting, right? Because money brings us, you know, new adventures and new fun things in our lives. And so there's some excitement there, right? But then there's always got to be this other side of the conversation that gets a little bit trickier, where you are starting to talk about things like rent, what you can afford, the current state of your budget, etc. Some of these finer details, which tend to then make the conversation a little bit difficult. You do not want to bypass that. Talk about your personal goals, talk about your financial goals. I want to pay, no more than $700 in rent a month. All right, that's my financial goal. I'm going to make that known to this potential roommate, this friend of mine, right? You want to have that conversation as best that you can. And continuing in this same example, right? Because I think this is really important for students who are tuning in, who might be considering living off campus. Continue to think about utilities in that conversation, groceries, commonly shared items like cleaning supplies, soap, paper towels, toilet paper. Like Becky mentioned earlier, who's paying for that toilet paper, right? If it's a longtime friend that you trust immensely, you might be inclined to share the costs of these things. But if you're bringing in new roommates to the mix, you might prefer to split the costs and cover your own expenses and buy your own toilet paper that you have somehow labeled and that's nobody else's toilet paper, right? I mean, I don't know. You have to know yourself. You have to know your personality, and you have to know your comfort level to be able to progress through these steps of setting personal goals for yourself, then making clear what these financial goals are. What are they as shared goals, right? Who's going to make the decisions? Am I going to make the decisions? Are we going to make the decisions together? And then any other topics that kind of come up when these conversations are taking place. So this aforementioned conversation that you might be having or will have at some point down the road, and really any kind of like normally difficult conversation about money can be made easier when you understand the person that you're speaking with. So the initial slides of this presentation really were focused on you and you getting to know yourself, but it's essential for you to also get to know the other person that you're dialoguing with. And so this is going to include understanding their value system and their financial habits. And really that's going to require a level of curiosity on your part, wanting to get to know this person that you are operating financially with. On the slide here, I love the two questions that are asking what financial expectations do you have of yourself and what expectations do you have of others? Could be for your partner, your roommate, your parent, fill in the blank, right? I think those are great questions because sometimes we hold ourselves to different standards, and having those different standards or different expectations is what could lead to some form of conflict. Let's say, for example, your parents are providing financial support to you while you are in college. The question right there is there a shared expectation on how that money ought to be used while you're in school? If there's not a common understanding and they're expecting you to spend that money on XYZ and you spend it on ABC, and then they find out, potential conflict could arise, right? So having these kind of conversations with the other people who you are sharing in finances with become very, very important. All of the questions here are useful. And I think that they're useful in one way because they bring folks together and they strengthen financial relationships, right? This is a way to build a bridge between parents and students, between roommates, between you and your significant other. And that's a great thing. On the flip side, as well, asking these types of questions can help two people determine whether a financial relationship is sustainable. And sometimes it might not be. And that's important information to have when making decisions in your life and in this financial journey that you're on. Where do you go next, right? And I'm not going to get too, sad about all of it, right? But I mean, that's reality. We want to make sure that we can be as compatible as possible with the people that we're sharing finances with. Let's ask these questions as soon as we can to figure out if it's going to work in the way that we want it to. Now, once you have a sense of this financial direction that your relationship is going to go in, whatever that relationship is, remember, once you have that direction pretty well defined, you can then open the door to additional questions to discuss with this person, right? Who is going to record and manage the budget is a major question. And that's true between roommates as much as it's true between, cohabitating couples, right? Who's going to handle the bills? Who's going to handle spending? Who's going to handle grocery shopping? Do we have shared financial goals? And if so, how are we going to tackle those together, right? Now, some of these questions I do think on the screen here are better suited for those cohabitating couples, right? Not all, but some of them. So what I'm going to say is peruse this list and select the questions that you think are best to ask in the specific financial context that you are finding yourself in.
And with all of that comes negotiating. So let's talk about that here briefly for a second. So Sarah mentioned things like how are we going to split like maybe food or who's going to buy the cleaning items and things like that. There is going to be some negotiating that needs to take place here. You might not get everything the exact way that you want it. Are you going to be okay with that? And if you're not, how are you going to handle that? Like maybe is that not the best living situation if it's with you and a roommate or something like that? Consider too, like how are things split? So you might want to consider the income of the different people who are maybe possibly living together. If one of them has a really high income, is that person going to pay more for stuff? Are you still going to split stuff equally? Are you going to base it on percentages? Who's going to be in charge of paying for those different items if they are more expensive? Or even things like if you want Netflix, right? Okay, well, if you want Netflix, but I don't want Netflix, are you just going to pay for it yourself? Am I not going to watch it at all? Are we going to split it because I might watch it? So even things like that, like those are negotiable areas of this is something that's really important to me. And that's why it's important to have those conversations ahead of time before signing those contracts and agreeing to be a roommate with someone, or going into something financial with someone else. You want to discuss those terms ahead of time so that those issues can be resolved up front and have a game plan for those. Okay. So, okay, we're going to split this. Or like in my house, my husband pays all the mortgage and I pay all the daycare, which, believe it or not, those items are about the same cost every month. So you have to have like a plan. What is that game plan to cover those expenses? And are you both, or maybe 3 of you or 4 of you, because I know how Penn State apartments are, that there might be 4 of you living all in the same place. Work together as a team. Be like, okay, let's have a team meeting, talk it out, come up with some solutions. What's negotiable for you and what's not negotiable for you, and work through it as a team.
Can I add really quickly here, Becky, too? Because this just it reminded me of kind of a personal circumstance for me that I've experienced. I think that negotiating is so important, and recognizing that when there is going to be many cooks in the kitchen, right? Lots of people who are interacting in a shared finance space, that has to be recognized as important, and the implications of, being, how do I say, if you are trying to control that situation, right? If you are trying to take charge, and that's not always necessarily a bad thing, right? Being a go-getter and wanting to manage finances for a group of people or for your significant other, I get the good motivation behind that, but I think we also need to take a step back and look at how somebody's financial picture could be impacted negatively if we exclude them from financial engagement. So this is something that kind of came to mind to me. Like, I think about building credit and building a healthy credit reputation or financial reputation. If you put all of the utilities in your name at this apartment that you're sharing with 4 other people, it's not going to look to anyone else like these other roommates are engaging in personal financial matters, right? Or that they're establishing a healthy history of making bill payments on time. So figuring out how to divide and conquer and negotiating through these conversations is really important, because there's a lot on the line, maybe even more so than you might realize from the get-go. So that's just what I wanted to add there. I'll take you to the next slide, Becky. Thank you.
Yeah, no, great. That's great. I think that's excellent. Some of this too ties into this, like, how honest are you in your relationship? How transparent are you with these discussions? In 2013, they did a study where they found that 1 in 3 people admitted to lying to their partner about finances and not necessarily being honest. Financial problems are also a really common cause of divorce. So having those open discussions and trying to get on the same page with whomever that person is, whether it be your partner, your roommate, your parents, how you're going to pay for school this year, come up with a plan together that's mutually beneficial is really the goal there. And being able to talk about that is what's really important. And reflecting on yourself, like, are there financial things or things that you might be hiding? Like, oh, I'm spending this money at the gym, but I don't want to tell my husband because he's going to be mad. Well, why are you doing that? And like, why is he going to be mad? Like, why do you think that he's going to be mad? Or whatever might be happening in that situation, reflect on that and reflect on yourself right now. Are there maybe things that you might not be fully honest about at this moment? Why is that occurring? Or what's causing that to maybe happen? So with all of that, our financial security and freedom tips here. So now that you've reflected on your personality and you've thought a little bit about too the other people that you're talking to and maybe how their personalities will interact with your financial personality, we're going to tie it up with some big tips here. Some of the biggest tips are just things like making sure that you do have some type of budget. And that could be a budget as a team, right? So like if the utilities and rent and things like that are all split or being shared, maybe having a a budget as a household or as an apartment is the best idea there. But having some type of budget, keeping accurate records and documentation for those different items, making sure you're using credit cards wisely if you have credit cards, just those general tips. And building an emergency fund is one of the ones that's on here that's really important. So once you have that budget, you got to make sure you have that emergency fund to cover those potential emergencies, which could be big or small. So it could be like, I need a new cell phone charger. That could be an emergency. The same as I wrecked my car and I need to buy a new one is an emergency. So there's different levels of emergency. So we do want to make sure we have that emergency fund or that like cushion there to support us. So with all of that being said, I gave you all these tips now here at the very end. If you're sitting there and you're like, oh, shoot, Becky, I don't know how to make a budget, or do I have an emergency fund, or how much should I even have in my emergency fund? That means you need to come see us. So if you're sitting here and thinking, I don't have answers to some of these questions, or I might need help with some of these things, that's your sign right now to schedule a one-on-one and come visit us, or check out our self-study modules and go through them, take the quizzes at the end to see how comfortable you are and see how your knowledge lands financially. You can even do it with someone else. Browse your website with your roommate, or browse our website with your roommate and go through some of this stuff together to make sure that you both are on the same page and understanding. And if not, or if you go through and you do the quiz and fail, that means come visit us. So we're here to help. Definitely use our resources.
I'll also add too with this, when I'm thinking of like follow-up services, especially in the context of the conversation that we just had here today, money and relationships. This, to me, my mind just goes to counseling right away, right? Like Becky, that this is the line of work that you do here at the center. You meet one-on-one with individuals, and sometimes you meet with individuals and their parents and individuals and their partners, right? And I also want to point out, in that same vein, there's also CAPS here at Penn State, the Penn State Counseling and Psychological Services. And I'm going to plug that into the chat here too, because there might be a need that you have regarding your relationship with others, roommate, significant other, parent, that you need maybe the supportive CAPS as well as our support, right? There are just kind of two different lanes that you can go down. There is couples counseling that CAPS does provide. Granted that at least one of the partners is a full-time student here at Penn State. So I'm just going to plug that, click the link to learn more. They're also a wonderful resource here on campus that you can follow up with. But like Becky said, if you've got questions about finances, we are the folks to go to.
Yes, we are very happy to help. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just gonna say thank you for everyone for joining us today. We hope that you got something out of this, and feel free to always reach out if you need anything further. We're happy to assist however we can.
And one way we do that is opening the floor for questions as well. So we have plenty of extra time left over before 1 o'clock gets here. Now that the chat is working, if you have questions that you'd like to ask us now about money and relationships or any other kind of money topic, please do so. I have my eye on the Q&A as well. So if you'd rather submit a question anonymously, we are here for that. If you don't have any questions and you are good to go for the day, then I will leave you in the chat with a thank you message and some information on how to let us know what you thought about today's session and stay in touch with us after the fact as well. But Becky and I will hold the line to see if there are any questions coming through.